keep your family safe. Fortunately for us, we can recognize that we're at the precipice, a point in history where we can all see the cycle changing. Where we go from here is up to us. So let's start the conversation, and welcome to the show.
And as always, I welcome you. Thank you so much for joining us, and enjoy another breath on this beautiful blue planet we call home, our Earth. Although it does seem like it's spinning out of control, you have to think about the ancients and how many times it had spun out of control through our recorded history, from the Younger Dryas impact on the ice sheet, through the 8,000-year cooling, through the Roman era, the Greek era, the reset Tartarian era, and everything in between. We're sort of kinetic, but we're sort of not. And I will say, as we come through this, are you prepared for a reset episode tonight with my co-host, Ransom Godwin? We're going to have to go through a couple points at the exact same time to facilitate this reset. It's going to be economic mainly because they needed to get us onto a digital system. They need to move us into hashcraft. They needed to get us over to central bank digital currencies and everything digital, including your digital rationing card, your allowance card, whatever that entails. But we're going to have to stop the oil. We're going to have to go to a kinetic global war. We're going to have to collapse the financial system and create so much pain. There will be no other choice, because a phoenix rising from the ashes will have no parallel system with it. The old system will be so crushed, so turned to ashes, that there will be no other choice except to adopt the new system, and that will be the only one available, the only one viable for the reset. So how does that change our world? We're looking at higher food prices now. Food and Agriculture Organization from the United Nations coming out, 19-month food high prices, and they're like, oh, it wasn't the all-time record high. Yeah, we're getting dangerously close to the all-time record high. Oil seeds are leading the charge, 32% increase over last year. And you ask yourself, why? I thought there was so much food available, abundant. I thought we were drowning in soybeans, according to the USDA, and I'm going to say questionable numbers in the carryover stocks, but we'll get into that as we move through the episode. Ransom, I don't know about you, but the week has been full of, it seems like the trajectory is getting more and more clear, especially with the Bank for International Settlements coming out, and also the International Monetary Fund pointing the finger at El Salvador, saying you can't use Bitcoin as your mandatory reserve currency, or else we won't give you any more loans. And El Salvador said, okay, we won't do that. Please give us more money. Chile followed also. IMF told Chile, you don't use Bitcoin as a reserve currency. It's not stable money, or else we won't give you any loans. And you know what Chile said? Okay, we won't use Bitcoin either. Please, IMF, give us more money. So now we're really starting to see this push and pull on what is going to be maybe the BRICS dominated Bitcoin ecosystem / commodities, compared to what we know is the US dollar fiat backed 36 trillion in debt USD never repayable system. And among other things, we're just going to walk through it. It's going to be a fascinating evening of discussion. So Ransom, appreciate you joining me, and the floor is yours, man.
I was just wondering how much, parasite drugs we're going to need here in the near future for all the commercial livestock that's just infested with parasites that eat animals and humans, according to them. I don't know. It seems like,
I don't know. Get your what do you need? Your fenbenzidol vibe on. Last time it was the ivermectin. This time it's going to be fenbenzidol.
I've heard good things about the one you're not supposed to talk about, and that might be why they said not to take it, because it works. I don't know. I'm just saying. I'm not going to say the name brand.
You got to stop nicotining, because that might break down these. I've heard nicotine breaks down certain things in the body, and maybe you shouldn't be taking that either, because maybe you're not supposed to break those things down, because that's meant to be a parasite that eats animals, humans, and hosts inside out. Sounds like one of those things that eats a grasshopper from the inside out.
Sounds like one of those things that's an excuse for why your beef prices are going to go up for no apparent reason. But the parasites...
Oh, wait a second. Beef herds are at a 65-year low in America. Just came out 2 days ago. Cattlemen's Association, Dairy and Cattlemen's Association, United States, is saying we're at a 65-year low in cattle herd right now. That explains some of it. But why so low? Why did it get so low? Why was it allowed to get so low? And why was it pushed so low is the question.
I think that because they're going to do the accidental great starve out. That's what it is. They want people to be hungry. Hungry people will take options, just like what you were talking about those countries saying, hey, you know what? Okay, we won't use Bitcoin. How about it's just a personal, individual backup currency? Because they can't really do nothing about that. But if the government is saying we're going to officially use it for a backup, now you're threatening those guys that offed Gaddafi. I mean, really, because that's, you mess with those guys and they're mad. And they control, I'm going to go ahead and say that they have a big hand in the BRICS, but they also control totally the U.S. petrodollar. And, you know, when you don't play their game, they come up with think tanks that say, hey, maybe we should just invade and destabilize 7 countries. And I think we're on number 6 right now. We just got 1 to go. And in the next coming weeks, you're going to hear about them acquiring real nuclear material to put in the end of their warheads. Now, whether it'll be yellow cake uranium type propaganda or one of the other nation states says, here you go. It's not unheard of. Matter of fact, the Clintons aided greatly in the expansion of the nuclear powers in the 80s. Well, was it 90s, I guess. Early 90s. We got China, we got India. They all just upgraded. Why not Iran? What's the problem with them? I don't know. Let them have it. They could just, you know, make a whole area there where people would be migrating back and forth between Africa and Asia and completely cut it off with a giant combat zone while simultaneously destroying every bit of human ancestry that goes back to that area.
Luckily, a lot of it's under the sand, so they can't destroy it all. There'll still be some remnants for the next civilization to find back 2 resets ago. And, you know, another thing to caveat into that, if you were to cut off the oil, that would bring this planet to its knees, right? So you're starting to look at how many of this, it's not even 2 birds, 1 stone, like the old David and Goliath slingshot. It's more like 6 birds, 1 stone. You know, we're looking at how many possible scenarios could roll out for the favor of this globalist technocracy in terms of facilitating many a reset religiously as well in that area, expanding territories in those areas. We've seen the maps and the arm patches. Also, you know, to take the oil away, to reset the superpowers, to reset the petrodollar, to reset BRICS nations and those who have commodities and who are trading. But it is, you're right, it's the same overseership. The Bank for International Settlements is still the same one that's in charge of the BRICS, still the same one that's in charge of the central bank digital currency issuance in the Ripple net on XRP ledger for on-demand liquidity. They're still the ones that are in the development phase of global settlements at 1/10,000th of a second for Hashgraph moving forward with Quant. They're in charge of the US dollar. They always have been. So you know what? It's not about are they in charge of BRICS or gold or Quant or Hashgraph or Bitcoin or whatever ledger technologies. It's what are they in charge of for the last 8,000 years that they still hold power to? And that's more my question. This area, you know, you can talk to it eloquently, and I'd like to hear some of your thoughts about how long has this area been such the focal point of history from the cradle of civilization? We're going back to Mesopotamia, further back, you know, Sumeria. What was prior to that? And you can't tell me just 7,000 years ago they popped out. Perhaps they were underground, perhaps not. Perhaps they were there all the time, and the victors write history. So perhaps they did survive the Younger Dryas impact. Society might have shrunken down a little bit, but they're like, hey, you know, this is a great time. They didn't have to know about the tech some 18,000 years ago, 13,000 years ago. They didn't have to, you know, we could just reset it and we start over again and pretend like we just started at 7,000 years. We don't have to tell them about, you know, coming out of the Ice Age and we had all this other tech going on there. So I just look at that area as, you know, the focal point. It always has been. You know, how many religions are, you know, focused in that area? You can't tell me that's a seed point of 3 great religions on the planet. and that there's nothing there, and then everybody's vying for the same exact spots. And then the biblical prophecies talk about Temple Mount and all these same exact spots again, and we're here just rotating in a circle again and again and again, 1,000-year stir on the humanity pot of DNA, for a better term.
Well, for sure, that whole area has been central to human evolution for the entire span of humans. You can go back hundreds of thousands of years and find humans of different kinds in that area. Not only is it a focal point of Europe, Asia, and Africa where they meet, it's the area where the different kinds of humans met in the ancient past. It's where Cro-Magnon met Neanderthal. It's where they met this Homo julianus, or whatever they're calling Denisovan at this point, the big head creature. But not only that, it's been occupied always. So people have moved out, they've moved in, but it's been always occupied for the entire written history of man. But nowadays, think about it, it's the bridge between cultures. If you control the navel, so to speak, of the world, I know different people have different beliefs, but there's this really interesting thing. There's the Karl Marx, the code. He's a researcher that realized that mathematically, all of these old megalithic sites, including Stonehenge and many of the other henges in Europe and even in Americas and in Russia and like all over the place, there's a mathematical code that says where it is in relation to the Giza Pyramid, which at that time was the prime meridian. I don't know why they moved it over to Greenwich or whatever it is. Sandwich. No, I'm kidding. But they moved it over. But if you use that code at the pyramids, it shows you that most likely that's probably the origin, or at least a very important place that they discovered was a mathematical spot that you could map out the rest of the world, and that all three of the continents, all of the different civilizations that could get access to each other, they all centered there. And you can go through the eras. You could go pre-dynastic, all the way up into the dynastic, the Roman era, the Greeks, the Persians, on and on and on. And here we go. We're fighting for it too. As a religious place, it has a lot of importance, going back to Sumerian tales. Baalbek, Lebanon is where Gilgamesh was trying to get to the Shem so he could become everlasting life like the gods or Anunnaki, depending on your persuasion there for that story. But he was 3/4 that and only a quarter human, and he had the lifespan of us. So there's a whole epic that's written in different languages. It's one of the oldest books we know about. Is it a fiction? I don't know. It could be, or it could be, really telling you that there was something about those places, which would be Jerusalem and Baalbek, which all of the other empires afterwards came and built on top of. So you have those giant stones in Baalbek. That is the foundation of the Greek and then Roman, buildings. But not to mention the ones that are not even out of the ground yet. No one knows how they cut them. No one knows how they moved them. We can't even imagine how they moved them because they're so massive. 3 of those exist in Jerusalem underneath the Temple of Solomon. And as far as the religions go, on top of that, from the Crusades all the way back, that's been an important place. Supposedly there was hidden knowledge of the esoteric nature there. 3 major religions come out of there, each with their own importance for that specific spot. It's a place where, Jacob laid down his head and saw the ladder to heaven. It's the place where Jesus was supposedly crucified and resurrected. It's the place where the prophet Muhammad ascended to heaven. And it just goes on and on. There's just more of it. Even the prophet Elijah in the Christian Bible, he went there too. He went to heaven there. So there is something so far back in human history that all of the nations on earth seem to have been in a bitter dispute to control that area. Is it just because it's the access to all the oceans of the world? It's the place where it seems that all the centralized governments throughout history tried to make their foundation and their center there. Especially like the Roman Empire. They had, they kept trying to push into that forever until Egypt fell, because something's there under the sand. And I think it's all the evidence of the pre-Diluvian civilizations. And God knows how much is buried under the Sahara. When you go along the edges of the Mediterranean, this is where you find the oldest examples of modern humans, i.e. Cro-Magnon, and it's on the Mediterranean, on the north side of Africa, on the south side of Europe. And if they were running around there then, before, even mixing with Neanderthal or any of that other stuff, that means that there's a long history that goes back into antiquity centered around that Middle East area. I mean, from the very beginning. Even the oldest mummies in Egypt, those blonde ones they don't like to talk about, they're older than the Pharaonic people. Something was important there. They lived there. They buried their people there and mummified them, which the later Pharaonic cultures seem to want to copy. There was something about the lifespan and the importance of human being that's located there. And I think that's the very same thing that's going on now. And that's why you see Western powers looking the other way as so-called moderate people are doing some god-awful things. We'll just put it that way. And, you get in trouble if you point the finger one direction or another about who's doing what. It doesn't really matter, except for, I think this brick US dollar showdown is going to happen between Ukraine and Egypt. All of it right there. And don't worry about those kinetic wars. We're going to see something new, and we'll get into that. It's basically, you're not going to see people on people anymore. You're going to see drones on drones, then drones on people, then bombs on infrastructure, and then the people will come and decide who gets to stay and who gets to do business and whatnot there. But there's a lot of that. So I think I have an answer for the New Jersey drones and other stuff, because people are bragging about their technology they're letting out right now. So it's all coming together. This is the reset. We're in the middle of it. It's just, what are we going to do after their new system's set up? Biometrics is happening. In the next 10 years, you won't be able to eat, buy property, travel, do anything without a complete biometric setup that allows any government around the world to know who you are, where you're from, what you're doing, what you plan on spending, and who you're associated with. And it doesn't matter who gets in office, whether it's communist or capitalist, they're all going for the same thing. It's the exact same plan. The hoodwink, I think right now, is the illusion of choice will be continued for a few more years until you realize there is no choice. It's their system, or you're going to be a Stone Age agrarian individual trying to slip in between borders.
That won't last very long. They'll have the drones out there with thermal technologies, and you'll be rounded up in like a fifth of an eighth of a second. So that movement, and again, if you like this type of content we are putting out, please support us over on buymeacoffee.com/civilization cycle. And I was going to read through a few of the comments there, and feel free to ask us some questions. We like to respond, especially if you're going to support our work here. But actually going through most of them, they're just, saying, hey, Liana, thank you. Great for your global information. And Taco Banana, you guys are awesome. Been listening for years. It's just, appreciation brought love for your information. And Imam Mark, bottoms up. So many people are, really excited to be involved in something different and how we see the world moving around the crystal ball here. Can we see beyond the bend over the horizon, for a better term? And, the illuminating content, because we do talk about, maybe some things that are not as well spoken about, and trying to connect different dots, because we're not really creating new history, I do believe. We're reliving a cycle from the past, now whatever form that might take. Because you said, moving from the Giza pyramids to Greenwich. Well, imagine if that was the way to obscure the mathematic precision of that time, and all they have to do is say, well, the geomagnetic pole shift or the actual physical pole shift move at this many degrees. And there's all these stories about the Giza pyramids being the only place on the planet that is the center point for the pivot of the degree that the crust would slip in a zero magnetic field, which means our sun has to go to a zero magnetic field, and there has to be a zero magnetic field within our solar system for allow that to happen, because then our Earth would then nullify its magnetic field, and the north or in the polarity of the crust in the inner Earth itself would decouple, and there would be no magnetic field. So the crust could slip across the, let's say, supple mantle of lava. So anywhere from 9 degrees on a shift to 15 degrees on a tilt, anywhere to 23 degrees. That's why I say the ecliptic is off this. And the only place that never seems to pivot from is the pyramids. They've seemed to have stayed in the exact same location. And I'm just wondering, how does that work when the Earth shifts? So are we being fed a story about crustal displacement? Is that the reason that they did move the pyramids from, like what you're talking about, that point as an emanation to do the mathematical calculations? Because then you can confuse history really easily. Because you look at the maps and like, well, when the pole was here, when the equator was there, a lot of these sites seem to match up. But then, you know, it throws a bunch of things into, I say, the netherworld of gray opaqueness of, was that really possible? Well, how did the Earth move? How's this? Nothing, you know, and the scientists won't talk about the possibility of a zero magnetic field and how the Earth's crust could slip. I'm just saying could. You know, our magnetic poles are in a wandering phase now. How's that affecting plant and animal life, human behavior, human perception? But coming back to a portal, if you will, Mount Kailash, also if you go to the Himalaya, India, Mount Kailash, again, it has the same Indus Valley, cradle of civilization, forbidden world, and everything seemed to flow down from Tibetan Himalaya all the way down to what we consider the border areas of Pakistan and India now, which is desert, which is another cradle of civilization. So how do we have two cradles of civilization going on at different, you know, 1,000-year periods, millennia between each other? But the story remains the same. Something that is so special to access Earth's inner sanctum cave system seems to be there as well, guarded by quote unquote deities, flying serpents, gnomes, gnolls, trolls, dragons, etc., things that won't let you enter further in than a certain point. You know, is this just another, the reason it's so highly contested and always has been, is it really truly a subway stairwell down to the inner Earth in these areas? Because, and again, you know, you come up with the Mayans and, you know, Olmecs and further back into antiquity in Central and South America, the same story is there. There's very sacred and revered locations that were built upon and contested. I think Mexico City, you think that was just there for random happenstance, or do you think that was a protected area that was taken over by the conquistadors? Yeah, they wanted their gold, but I think they're on a mission to find something else. So we start to see these different areas around the planet that China, when you go out to Xi'an or Shenyang, when you get further out and you got the emperor's tombs out there, like, why did Emperor Qin set up that gigantic facility of what you consider the size of, you go to the pyramids of Egypt, the smallest of the pyramids is the same size as Emperor Qin's tomb. Terracotta warriors aside, they're in a different place, a little bit away from the tomb. But you're looking at something made of earth that is the same size as the third, or the smallest of the pyramids in the pyramids of Giza. So same height. And you're looking to go, well, that's pretty rare that they would be able to build it out of earth, but were they covering another portal or another entrance? And you start to get into this similarity of large buildings across certain areas that have always been protected since antiquity. And even now, there's areas that are forbidden to go anywhere around. Once you get in certain areas around these pyramid complexes in China, especially around Shenyang, which is the original of the emperor's capitals, Still to this day, Verboten, and you look at what we did with the military bases and the way we cordoned off a lot of things, and they were looking for Nimrod's head, etc. So it just makes you ask, how obscured and lied about is our history from the victors? I mean, really, what do we know? Because as the CIA said, once everybody believes everything that we tell them as truth is a lie, then we know we've won. So how close are we to that point where everything we think we know, literally everything you think you've ever known, is a lie? And I'm not talking about certain mathematic principles here of 2 + 2 = 4, but everything that you think you grew up knowing in terms of history, in terms of these cycles, in terms of religions, what if it all is completely fictitious? At that point, then you would never go in search of some of these areas here. And, you know, there's one last thing I wanted to say. They're doing a few new studies. They're finding different layers of what would have been supersonic plasma discharge blast, ionic winds carrying different sized debris out through what is considered central and southern Iraq. They started to see if it was drought cycles, like why all these villages and towns and cities all disappeared in unison at the same time. And they were thinking, well, it's just a giant drought, because they found different deposition layers of different like sand grains. So they thought it was blown because of winds and some sort of, I don't know, onset of a high pressure system for a couple hundred years in the area, and they couldn't figure it out. Well, come to find out that perhaps there was something that destroyed that area in terms of a plasma bolt from the heavens, literally plasma, space lightning hitting in a region near there. Now, would that not be another one? Now, think about this, like the Temple Mount there, when you look at it and you look at the old maps, it looks like a discharge. It looks like lightning hit that area. But you can look at when plasma comes down in terms of lightning in a very, 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 very soft form, when a large bolt of lightning hits the ground and it creates those fulgurites. Well, the same exact thing, that entire Temple Mount is one fulgurite. So you have to think about how large would the plasma bolt from space need to be to hit on that single area. And it might make sense why there would be cavernous areas there. The energy from a discharge at that level of literally space lightning, two planets connecting electromagnetically, and that discharge between the two, because they're not equally balanced, there's going to be a differential there, potentiality of one to move to equalize the other one. And what if that equalization discharge was right there and it created the Temple Mount? Because look at the maps, not the modern ones. You need to go a little bit further back in time. Look over at the Temple Mount. Look at Jerusalem and some of the older maps from, say, the 1450s or the 1600s, and you'll see exactly what I'm talking about, the discharge pattern from planetary lightning. Would that not be a place that you would also want to inhabit because of the energetic resonance? Whatever portals might have been open there during that high energy, high frequency event, and then also the tunneling and the caverning and the channeling that would have created, as far beyond anything humans could have done. And they always talk endlessly about how many caverns and, you know, tunnels and you know, connecting hundreds of miles away of this type of underground system there is. Well, was that built by man, or was that built by nature, and just the conditions were right for it to be so valuable at the time? And perhaps there's still resident energies that can be harvested and utilized during these ceremonies. Just throwing it out there, man, just throwing it. But thank you, everybody, for supporting us on buymeacoffee/civilization cycle.
Yeah, you know, I had a couple things to bring that whole discussion back down to earth. We kind of know where the pyramids come from in China. And we know that the emperor found them and he liked them. And he had some ideas about them of his own, I'm sure. We don't know exactly what they are, but definitely, like the Pharaonic people, he took credit for the rest of them, or what there was. However, there's some interesting findings by some of those pyramids in China, and that's the use of magnets.
And
so
mercury.
They had magnets, and the theory is that they were using them to align those pyramids. Now, here's a question. We know the magnetic field moves, and this is why I bring it back down to earth. I don't think that the planet has ever tilted outside of the way it is. And I say that because the precession of the equinox has been being monitored at least 75,000 years. And in that entire time, they've had the same sky. It hasn't changed. However, you point out the alignment on some things. The magnetic poles did change on several occasions and are doing it now. So if you were a culture that understood magnetics, which it appears some of these 6-foot tall redheaded guys out there in the desert in China understood, they were aligning their pyramids and different things to magnetic north instead of the physical north. So over time, this would change. And we see that in the Middle East as well. Certain buildings change and they rebuild them, and then it's tilted just a little bit more. I think they were using magnets. Matter of fact, all these sites are highly magnetic. All of the stuff in South America, for sure, like the megalithic stuff, Cusco, Tiwanaku, the little blocks they use, the magnetics don't match the other blocks that are lined up with it. So they pretty much know they found these blocks and put them together. However, over about, I don't know if it's 60 yards or 90 yards away, you have, I was about to say Göbekli Tepe because they're so weird like that, but I meant Pumapunku with its oddly out of time, machining looking built stone. Something that got destroyed big time. It just got obliterated. Every one of those stones has a high magnetic property to it. And most likely they were aligned in a certain way. And then on top of that, think about this. If the magnetic field has collapsed, guess how close to the ground lightning is striking from top to bottom. It's close. It's right up there. It's interacting with these rocks everywhere. So you would have seen probably megalithic stuff in Europe, everywhere. Like in France, you got the Carnegie stones, or I think that's what you call them, but the stones that are lined up there. And they all show mathematic principles that we use today that, other than building stuff back then, we don't even know what they were using this complex mathematics for, but we know they had it because they engraved it into the stone, into the formations of their buildings, into the whole layout of each of these places. And just think about this. If the magnetic field is really close to Earth, you're also very susceptible to anything that happens on the sun. So if the sun burps out a nice plasma storm or a geomagnetic storm comes your way, there's no magnetic field to buffer that, and it's just going to beam in. So if you lived somewhere where, you might not be able to go outside in the daytime all of a sudden, you might just abandon that stuff. Or, like you find on the Giza Plateau and in Jerusalem, massive amounts of subterranean construction. There's so much stuff on the Giza Plateau that they haven't even unearthed, and it's ahead of its time compared to all of that pharaonic stuff. It's super right angles, giant megalithic blocks built into stuff. Most of it's under the sand. It's flooded. There's no interest in digging it up, really, because they're milking the Egyptologist version of events for tourists and stuff. But they're not going to dig that up. And just like there in Pumapunku, they're not going to dig it up. You go to Göbekli Tepe, I think they've dug up probably as much as they're going to. They know it's a massive facility. They're not going to dig it up. It's answering too many questions. It's putting dates out. It's showing formations of language and other stuff. It's part of the mystery of the human expansion on the planet. Not this one, but the one before. And there's a lot of evidence that just got totally wiped from the face of the earth at some point. And we have no idea how advanced they really were because they didn't write. They didn't write anything. That's the thing. You can tell one thing from another is if there's writing on it, it came from our civilization. The megalithic builders did not write on their stuff. There is no language associated with it. There are depictions of animals. There are mathematical equations built into it, and maybe even a magnetic puzzle on top of acoustic. So almost every one of these sites from inside the Middle East or England or Germany or wherever you go, you find one of these sites and there is a specific harmonics at that place, and they almost always match. I believe it's like 10 megahertz or something like that. I would have to look it back up, but they're the same tone. So people have gone to these different places, even in South America, and find the same tone, the same resonance. So that was something important, maybe even something to do with how they put it there. I don't know. But all of them seem to be designed for humans to reach a new level of understanding, not only through like meditation and sound. Like some of these places, if you would just hum in it, you would get put into a trance. Other people that came would get put into that same trance because of the acoustics, and they have used that technology today, and that's what we're being kind of manipulated with right now. And I kind of wanted to go through the headlines and show you the answer is here. They have the answer for you. They are going to make things miserable until you accept their seemingly better choice after the reset, which is now. And I'll get into that.
So Ransom, let me, can I throw one thing in there?
Yeah.
Near to Göbekli Tepe, they found 5 other sites, and they just released in the news. Probably, I remember reading about a week ago, they found 5 other sites equally as large right near Göbekli Tepe within a 20-mile radius of there. And the thing about Göbekli Tepe is, yeah, they only excavated about 3% of it. And if you knew that they'd planted olive trees over the rest of it on top of the site, because it's illegal to cut down olive trees.
Yeah, just like in China.
Yeah,
same thing in China.
The reforestation on the hillsides, you can't go in there, and there's still a lot of those pyramids that have supposedly never been excavated because, yeah, they covered them in sacred trees, and you just can't. There's some of them that they knew there was some advanced technologies in there, and you're not allowed to see that. So let me hit with the headline here before you start. H. Johnson 8225 says, by the way, the tariffs will not work against BRICS nations. Yeah, well, over this last week, Trump was saying 100% tariff on if you want to use anything other than the dollar. And China cut off a rare earth oxide class of imports, which is a gallium, gallium, antimony to start, and then the full other range of rare earth oxides. So the aerospace industry instantly took a nosedive. And then China put out the word that they knew America was going to buy from other countries like Canada, was going to buy it in lieu of us, and we would just import it over the border. And China had put out a news release and said, if you cargo it to the United States as an intermediary buyer, we will also cut you off directly. So now they're putting the word out, no more rare earths get to the United States. And if you help the United States get it, you're getting cut off too. And Russia also is going to be cutting off all of the uranium exports to the United States that are fueling our reactors. So that 100% tariff, okay, whatever. But 2 majors have just cut us off from things that are so essential for our nation to run. It's almost as if it's being done on purpose to get us into this collapse phase early and on purpose and fast track, because they know their reaction once they put that announcement out.
I don't know. I think they might have a backup plan for that. We might be getting that stuff from Peru. And just so happens we gave them all our trains to ship it and mine it and all that stuff. So
we don't need any trains in America. What are you kidding?
Right. So not to mention that our backup diesel excess of trains and engines and stuff like that is going overseas. We won't have it if we need it. Just throwing that in there. But I wanted to just go down the headlines and show you that the ancient world is happening now. You kind of said that earlier, but they've taken things that they've learned from the past, like these harmonics, ritual mentalities and things like that, things from religion. And now it's a technocratic weapon being used against you, and all answers will come from the same place. They are going to make this idea of the post-reset transhumanist world look so good in comparison to the world that we live in now, that you'll just be begging to have it. You'll be crying to why hasn't my country and my area got connected to this yet, because they'll be jealous. And they don't realize it's like a Venus flytrap. It's honey to get you in there. It's a bait and switch. But we'll get into that with these headlines right here. And I'll move through them fast so we could, talk about it. Here we go. You're worried about your safety? Don't worry. AI will protect you and your image, so these bad guys can't hack you and make movies about you and stuff. So poor girl got
digital ID. Here we come.
right. So they're gonna have this
We need
digital
the vein
ID,
print in all 10 of your fingers and your hands and your wrists.
but not just that. All your biometrics will have to
All
be
of it.
used to protect you from computer-generated facsimiles of you and your identity. So you're going to have to turn over all your biometrics. That means facial scans, fingerprints, your gait, all of that stuff will be compiled.
Retinal scan, man, that's coming in 2027. If you want to visit Europe, you Americans, full facial scan, all 10 fingerprints come this year, 2025, and they will be doing retinal scans for you to enter Europe in 2027.
Yeah, they're gonna show you all these excuses why you need to opt in. And here's one of them: to protect your identity, not just your online identity, but your actual physical appearance and personhood. And they'll tell you the only way to protect you is if we take these biometrics and then we can put in the algorithm to create securities to verify your identity. And then that'll spread. But don't worry, we have, AI Jesus to protect us if you need that. And I did predict that all the religion is going to go AI. It's an easier way of propaganda and real-time changing of ideas to suit the scenario they want. You going bald? I'm not talking about you, DuByne, but you other guys, don't worry about
it. Hey.
Hey, I got the big what do they call it? The monkey's butt on the back where I got the spot
the big
growing.
Thinning.
Yeah, I got that going on.
The great thinning.
But the answer is the same as every other problem. AI will fix that for you with lots of little robots. What kind of robots, do you ask? Nanotech robots. That's right. They don't exist in medicine, but they exist to fix your hair. Let's move on.
Wait a second. I'm going to be pissed if I wake up one morning and I have hair again.
You got infected by somebody.
Yeah, I mean, it's just going to rope me back into paying for haircuts every month, man. That's going to take money out of my pocket I don't need to spend.
And there's another new idea that I was going to get to, but you kind of got to it right there. Instead of sexually transmitted diseases, you are now going to have technologically transmitted DNA and RNA. And we can't get into that, but let's use it for the hair loss application and we can talk about it. You might be around somebody that's taking a certain kind of nanotech or an mRNA treatment for their hair loss and it sheds. You get some of that. So we can't get into that too far, but who's running it all? While everyone watches AI, Google broke time itself. Their quantum chip just solved a problem that would outlast the universe in 5 minutes. That's the level of computational power we're about to go in. And when you keep that in mind...
Wait, hold on, man. I'm gonna definitely rip that to shreds. Like, how do they even have machines that could calculate it if it's that much faster than anything we have currently? Then how can we even measure something that fast with a technology that's so far behind that we can't even measure that fast in terms of speed? So how do they even know what the calculations are? This is just drivel, people.
I don't think it
drivel.
is.
You can't measure something that fast if we don't have the technology currently to measure something that fast.
That's what you don't understand.
That's impossible
it's
to even
already
calculate
measured.
it and measure it. We don't have the machinery, the technology to measure it. So how is that even theoretical?
I'll tell you.
That's the only possibility. It's a woo-woo with theoretical things slapped on a wall with 6 monkeys writing in crayons.
No.
Then you actually having machines that can test and verify and validate and retest and recalculate and then repeat the experiment. And there's nothing. That's impossible to even calculate speeds like that. We don't have the technology to do it. So that's just, again, that's fictitious. And they're just making you think it is. It ain't.
I disagree. The information is already there. It already exists. The computation is already happened. All they're doing is tapping into the information. So classically, we would predict things with these bits, zeros, and ones. Now we're using zeros and ones at the same time, which means what they're doing is they're predicting all outcomes. So they're not really computating it more than they're just tapping into the information that already exists. You get what I'm saying? This is what we've been talking about forever.
There's only so many layers that are possible combinations, and all those running at the same time. Even if you're in a multiverse running those computations, the number, it's just It seems fanciful for me. It really
whether or
does.
not you believe it or not, that's the answer being given to problems. So here we go. Google says they can tell you what's going to happen for the next 15 days in a forecast. Traditionally, the weatherman is like 40% or less accurate, but the AI, they're going to tell you where to go, or when not to go. What if they tell you the weather's going to be bad and there's bad air quality and, you know, the sun is bad right now today? Whether it is or not, you won't care because your Google told you what it's going to be. So you'll just act accordingly. And then
wait a second now. What if they could work with the insurance companies and know in advance and say, all right, this tornado area, we're going to triple your rates for insurance for these 2 weeks, or else we're going to cancel your insurance because it's a tornadic pattern that is forecast through Google's algorithm in these next 15 days. And we see that it's going to rip through this area of the state and everybody has to pay a premium during these times that Google forecasts out.
That would be very scary, but they could definitely use it for that. Then they would have to come up with whole new legislation fighting them about doing that. But that's kind of the point, though, is no one...
We got time. We got hundreds of years, man.
No one is actually working anymore. They're replacing every facet of the human with an AI. And this goes down to the machine that's chopping your steak at Walmart, all the way up to your investments. And it's back and forth. They're going to tell you about, you know, whether or not there's a forest fire, when to leave, supposedly. But like I said last week, this same software can be used to snitch on you about the products you may have in your house, like raw cheese or raw milk, or I don't know, say you went hunting and you had some livestock in your freezer. The same technology can tell all of that from outside of your house on the curb. And we know what Google has done before. You remember they partnered with the post office and the federal government to go around tapping information from people's wireless internet connections. So those were all the beta programs. All of this is going to hit like a ton of bricks. And people just aren't going to know what's going on. They're not even going to know why the politicians are saying what they're saying. And we'll get into a minute about the drones and what's really happening with that, because I can tell you exactly what's going on with that. It's not UFOs. It's not foreign nations. It's our own nation getting us prepared for new legislation and unmanned policing powers, which they just authorized themselves to do a few weeks ago. And I mean lethally. That's right, lethally. So guys are looking at you from above. They get a court order. They say it's too dangerous for the police to raid you. Boom. No more problem.
Oh, wait, that was the other John Smith. My bad. The biometrics were mixed up. See, that dude didn't do his retinal scan, so we would have identified the person correctly, and that wouldn't have happened. See, this is what happens if you don't get your retinal scans. And
you brought me to my next point. I have articles about AI's policing power messing up to 3,800%, giving people tickets, saying they ran red lights. And we're going to give this faulty AI power over nuclear weapons, military drones that have the ability to autonomously decide whether or not a target should be eliminated or not. And that's what we're about to see. In the next 5 years, you are going to see massive amounts of drone warfare.
Gee, you're building it up. I can't wait for the next couple of years. Happy New Year to you, too. And remember, if you like our content, please buymeacoffee.com/civilization cycle. Support our work over there. Sassafras Red, we were talking a little bit earlier about, I like nicotine as a possible to dissolve kind of metals in my body and cleanse me out. Nicotine's a good one for that. Try gumweed, Osha, elecampane. I don't know what that one is. Licorice and elderberry. Elecampane, elecampane or elecampane. I'm not sure what that plant is. Gumweed, I know that one. Osha, licorice, and elderberry. So all these are very helpful, and a lot of these you can grow yourself or wild forage if you're in the correct locations. But as we move forward, it does seem like we're moving into the the era of you needing to buy clothing. I've seen a couple of these sweaters where you pull over and it throws off the AI because there's like buildings and people and all stuff in the sweater. We're in the era of AI avoidance clothing. Hey, choose your Christmas gifts wisely for your friends, right? I don't know where it takes us.
How many of them toys are going to go out this Christmas that link to your entire wireless system? You know, that you're sitting there talking about private stuff and your kid's there with their doll. What did you say, Daddy? Can you say that for the FBI?
They're not listening. They never do. You have to give it permission for them to listen.
Right.
And I would always turn I'm going to turn that thing from blue to no. Of course they would never listen. They always ask first, Ransom. How you believe?
Nobody watches. Nobody reads that. Nobody reads that. They go on the internet. They sign up for stuff. It shows them thing that you agree to, a user agreement. You don't read that. You just click on it. When you go buy your Samsung TV from Walmart, did you agree to be spied on? Well, it doesn't matter because you bought their product, you took it in your home, and it even warns you that it may be watching you, listening to you, and sharing it with third parties.
I was looking, I go to some European websites, and occasionally, you have to click that yes, agree to all, or click your own preferences. Well, I looked into click your own preferences, and it said on one of the things that I clicked, it said, a lot of times people don't ever hit the blue words, and then it expands to the next page to even see what anything's all about. Well, I read, and I opened that page, and there, if you want to share with our 700 partners. I'm like, what? So you clicking yes to this allows 700 cookies to come on your computer from everything from whatever partners their affiliated partnerships were on that website, allowing reading a single article for free on a website, and you give them authorization to put 700 cookies on your computer for one web page. Now imagine dozens or hundreds of web pages that Ransom and I surf every day. That's why we use VPNs, because somebody here, Taco Banana, said, would you and Ransom put together sort of a to-do list of things you would do to get ready, just some general bullet points? Well, getting a VPN on your computer is the first thing. Loading up Brave with DuckDuckGo might be another one. But DuckDuckGo has been sort of compromised as of late, too. But VPN and Brave is at least a start to try to get some anonymity. But there's really very little any longer. So, I mean, versus running Google on, and whatever kind of thing open with no VPN running Google, you're asking for it.
I don't think the Fourth Amendment exists in the corporate world. So, or the Third Amendment. People forget about that. If you have people that work for the government tapping or listening or watching, then essentially you have a soldier quartered in your home. And
oh, absolutely.
That's a violation, but they've been doing it since Snowden told on all of them. What has happened about that? Absolutely nothing.
Nothing.
So they're still
that's
doing
not a physical person, so they can't actually say it's about, the way it was written was a person, because at that time there was no technologies in eavesdropping and electronic data communication. So the only way for somebody to actually be quartered in a home would be a person in the home. Right. Yeah. So, I mean, everybody keeps talking about, well, we all need to update this thing because this piece of paper is so out of date. You're going to have to update that one, too. If you're going to say, well, it's only going to be second one that we can need to update and the first one, too, well, then we should probably need to update the third one, like get out of my house and take all your gear with me. I saw some interesting EMP sort of devices that the Chinese had to knock drones out of the air. And it was this thing. It looked really cool. You could press different range buttons on it and then finally put it like an EMP in a directed pulse. It wasn't just like blast everything and knock out buildings, but it was a very precise EMP beam that would lock on to the drones that were up there and literally just turn off their circuitry, and they just fell out of the sky.
Or a
that should be the household device
gun.
That everybody needs. You need an EMP directed pulse kind of handheld device.
You need
That's
a microwave
goodie. That's
beam.
on my Christmas list too.
That's what the military uses. Microwave beam. So
this was a handheld one then.
You would have to make a handheld one out of your home microwave.
Oh, is it giving us the blueprint? Where do we find it, Ransom? I want the PDF. I got a solder gun. I'm ready to go. And again, if you liked our content, please join us buymeacoffee.com/civilization cycle, and also civilizationcycle.com. Put your email in there. We'll get you the show notes. Like I blasted those out before the show tonight. That's civilizationcycle.com. Throw your email in there. We will get you with the first and second hour notes. We're talking about 8 bullet points. Back after the break here, and please join us. Come right back.
You're listening to Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com, and we'll
Pro Clear Cleanse is the most powerful spray cleaner on the market today. No elbow grease necessary. Pro Clear Cleanse cuts through grease and grime like a chef's knife. Finally, the one cleaner that can do it all. Powerful surfactant cleaning technology cleans ovens, glass, porcelain, even polished wood. Environmentally friendly, less packaging and waste with no harsh smells, pet safe, child safe. 5 tablets equals 1 bottle of traditional cleaner. It's 5 months of cleaning for a fraction of the cost. Behold the grease-erasing power of Odor Crush. Simply drop a tablet into your bottle of warm water and shake it so it is evenly diluted. Spray the surface you want cleaned. Let set longer for tougher grease. Take a paper towel or a reusable cloth and wipe. Done and done. One of the best things about Pro Clear Cleanse, it's you can take it anywhere. Hiking, camping, or on vacation. Without having to buy or bring cleaner, you can store the same potential in the tablets, then just add water and bam, you have a bottle of cleaner. Order now and make life a little easier and cleaner.
through our world as we see the reset hitting. One of the main things I wanted to talk about tonight too is food pricing. I don't know if you've seen the food headlines across the world, but the minimum 32% increase in your oils, seed oils, not a fan. Nobody's a fan of that. But a lot of the world cooks with that. They have no other choice. For us to be snooty on our high horse, having tea with the queen, and we say, hey, we want to have, and we are so lucky to be able to have a choice of oils. Do we want avocado oil? Do we want macadamia nut? Do we want olive oil? Do you know you live higher than 1% of the world's population at 2%, 5% of the world's population? You're in that top echelon. If you have that choice to even have those oils. Do you know how many people have no money? They're living like $2 a day. All they have is corn oil. All they have is soybean oil. All they have is vegetable oil. That's it. They don't have those choices, those luxuries like us living like kings and queens out here because I like olive oil. These seed oils, not a fan, and we need to get rid of those. Those are not healthy for us. But that is the thing that rose 32% this year in the food cost. Looking at the Food and Agricultural Organization, the FAO, our food prices are at 19-month highs globally. So since the beginning of the year, everybody in America is paying at least 6% more for food. Although they would say, oh, the deflation is here. I'm going to say, oh, not really. The core, the way they calculate inflation, they leave out things like food and fuel, the things that you think would be the most costly in your life. But even the housing, which they were touting as, oh, house prices are coming down. Not really. The used automobiles are coming down in price, but new automobiles are skyrocketing still. Even though they're giving discounts and things, they're still counting the manufacturer's retail price from the manufacturer itself. So as that increases, even though dealers are offering massive discounts, so the way they calculate everything in life is just, you need an accountant to understand even the basic CPI anyway. So as we look at it, and here's my question for you as we start the second hour here. So Revolution Radio, thank you for letting us broadcast. And if you do consider free speech something that you value, please consider a donation to Revolution Radio to keep Ransom and myself on air here, as well as others with voices into trying to give you knowledge and information to make better choices as we move down this change that we're all experiencing through our civilization here at this juncture of low magnetic field, grand solar minimum onset. We peaked out off the solar maximum. We're heading into solar minimum now. There'll be more cloud cover, more floods. As we get down into solar minimum, and the weather disruption you're seeing now is really very mild comparatively at what we're going to see year by year now, marching down as more cosmic rays are inbound and strike those clouds and then nucleate and create more cloud cover. And the record floods are now transitioning into record snowfalls across the planet. So a year's worth of rain is now a year's worth of snow in a single storm. And we're seeing this again and again and again. And what Ransom's showing there on the screen of us is lake effect snows that were blowing in, and everybody's like, well, November, it snows in November. These snow records across the Great Lakes, all of them, were not broken by a little bit, like a tenth of an inch. They were smashed by feet different, above the old records. So, that's something, all 5 Great Lakes at the same time under blizzard warnings, a little bit rare, but then breaking these old records by 3 inches, 6 inches, 9 inches, 16 inches of the old record broken, that's very significant. It's not like a tenth of an inch or an inch. 16 inches different, that's a huge. So as we start to see around the world, food is going to be a huge thing. So, again, long-winded, but why did seed oils increase 32% this year? I thought we were supposed to be like drowning in a Himalaya-sized mountain of soybean, for example, according to the USDA. So you look around the world and you're like, all right, South Africa, for example, is a major corn grower and an exporter. They're the largest exporter inside Africa to other countries inside Africa. So generally, like Egypt and Namibia and Botswana and other countries will always buy corn from South Africa, and they generally will export about 8 million tons. 10 on a really good year, 6 on a bad year, but still that's outbound. This year, they had to import corn because they couldn't grow enough. And then right now it's the planting season, and it's such a drought condition, they're not going to be able to plant very effectively. So next year, there's going to be a corn deficit as well. So the African nations go, well, we need to get corn from somewhere else because we need to crush it for the corn oil. Well, Ukraine's offline. That was 30 million tons of production, 25 million export, and that was totally cut off as well. But almost all that corn was going to North Africa, Central Africa. So now we got two nations that used to supply most of Africa with oils and grains that would be crushed grains. They're offline. So now there's this push and pull around the world. And in America, we sit on just literally mountains of soybeans. China canceling orders. China wants an order, cancels it again. They're playing games with our grain. Ours isn't really moving as fast or as effectively as it used to. So that game playing is limiting some of our exports. So now you're starting to see deficits or shortages around the world. So this is just the beginning. If we're getting into shortages already that are viable enough to drive oil prices for your food, seed oils and vegetable oils up 32% in a year, and we're not even at what you consider worldwide shortages yet, like what's going to come in the prices when we do get into more, let's say, vast shortages as this weather continues to just drop out magnetic fields and our jet streams going into different locations. Like, how high can the food get? Because we're looking at Florida has not grown this small of an amount of crop of oranges since 1930. That's a 100-year cycle in itself. But with the increases in the green technology, the green revolution, and we're at 100-year lows in orange production in terms of bushels / baskets. And coffee, both Arabica and Robusta, highest prices ever recorded, ever, blowing through the 1970s superinflation wave above that. We saw cocoa run to $12,000 a ton. That's unheard of. And everywhere you look, every single thing is going up. Olive oil prices up. Wine prices up. So it was unbelievable that, countries are being paid to destroy their vineyards. Then they could put solar panels on there. And, I was talking with John Kitson from the UK, and he was telling me just vast amounts of land are going offline to install windmills and solar panels. So our food is being completely removed. And then the inheritance tax from the farmers, like how are farmers going to be able to pass the land down to their kin to be able to grow food? This is another thing people are not talking about. Our generation, where it's happening right now with food prices and, adverse weather and this sort of that's one thing to contend with. But the next generation one, places are being rewilded. Farmers are being paid to destroy their fields and crops. They're paid not to ever plant again. Their farms are being bought up and neighborhoods are put on there. Like, this next generation is probably going to have 30 million less acres to grow food. So it's going to be a permanent, forever stable price of 2 to 3 times higher than we know now for the next generation. And it'll be limited, and they'll have to be on digital rationing cards, which brings us right back to the very beginning, what Ransom and I were talking about. When we get into this AI driven, tracked and traced world, food, you're going to have permission to eat and get food. So Ransom, I know that's a long-winded introduction again, but hey, welcome back. And please remember, everybody out there, if you like our work, support us on Civilization Cycle. Buy me a coffee. Ransom, back to you.
Yeah,
microphone.
Microphone?
Microphone.
It's on.
Nope, can't hear you.
It's on your end.
Nope, nothing.
Let me ask the chat.
Nope, nothing. We've had some problems with the tech a little bit before, too.
Can you hear me now?
Nope, nothing. Oh, wait, something.
They can hear me.
Talk to me again.
Yellow?
There you go, yo.
Yeah, I think
my volume down. My bad. Excuse me, teacher. That was.
No, I was going to say.
Crayon or another stick of chalk for the board?
Right. I was going to say.
I will turn my volume up. I will turn my volume up. How many times do I need to write that? I will turn my volume up.
The people are going to have trouble eating, but that's not the only thing. Their bills Speaking of which, I got like a $500 electric bill, and we're in what are we in December now, right? So they're just cranking up, like they want you to sit in a house, no heat, no cooling, little bit of food, some crickets or grasshoppers or something in the pantry. And
you're building it up for me, man. Happy 2025.
You would be sitting around the fire and being okay with it, but you're not allowed to burn wood. They done shut off the gas, but that's okay. Maybe they want it to go the way it's going in Canada, where 1 out of 20 people are being euthanized. Yeah, that's right. 1 in 20. Can you believe that? So,
no, I can't. Is that true? Or is that voluntary, or are they forcing those people in there?
No, it's voluntary at this point.
It's gotten so bad, people would choose that little blue lifeboat there compared to living.
I said it wrong. It's not 1 in 20 people. 1 in 20 deaths is euthanasia. So that's, because they talked somebody in with mental disabilities that they wanted to do that. They got the drug addicts are allowed to do it. If you feel like you're too old, you're allowed to do it. And if you act now, you can get financing and the government loan. They have a government loan to give you if you want to do this. Now, I understand for some people that they have terminal illnesses that are so painful they want to fast forward. But for all of these other reasons, well, if, food costs too much, that's just what's going to happen, I guess.
Grow your own.
Bills, too much food costs. You know what? I'll just get a loan from the government, and that'll take care of it.
That's a twisted world we're moving into, and this is considered normal. Like, you would look at this as some sort of dystopian novel from the past or some sort of Black Mirror episode present.
Absolutely. And then, they have everybody freaking out over... I've studied these. I've looked at the videos. Believe me, I can't show them all tonight. I'll show a couple of them here in a minute while you're talking, but this whole thing is being drummed up, and you got to keep in mind that the airwaves are now open, not the airwaves, the skyways are now open for commercial drone use, right? People forget that. So I'm not saying that's what these drones are, but I'm saying that if you get everybody excited, scared, worried, they want their politicians to do something, well, they already want to do something. And that's heavy regulation of private drones in any application. Because you can't have you up there while they're doing military surveillance exercises and Amazon's delivering your Nikes and Walmart's delivering your grocery store items that you ordered because, well, you can't go to the grocery store because of the riots and you don't want to get robbed on the way there. So, they could just drop the food, airlift, supply package right in your yard. And then you don't even have to leave your house on the next pandemic. You could just stay in your house with no heat, and they'll drop off your care packages for you. Only the amount that's allotted for your ration, for your family per use. I could see all of that happening.
When I was at Ransom, I saw a video of one of those delivery drones, but they dropped it from like 8 feet up. And, the box just crashed onto the ground and looked like it sort of split open on one of the corners. And I'm like, well, what if it was something fragile? What if it was foodstuffs? You have part of your food or whatever items ruined on delivery.
Have you seen the delivery drivers throw the packages at the doors? It's the same thing.
Yeah, well, the drone was a little bit more rough because it was higher up and gravity was taken.
I think they're just doing that to get people prepared for not being able to do certain things that they're used to. And you got to buy a catch net. Now everybody's going to have a new included cost of buying a catch net, so when it drops, it won't hit on your concrete front driveway. Everybody's got to buy a catch net system, which will be a mandatory thing if you want to get drone deliveries. So how much will that cost? And people running into the ROI on 200 million people are going to buy catch nets for these drones. So how much money would that be for the bottom line of the new company? Right,
just doing simple napkin math.
Well, think about all the things that are happening simultaneously in the news headlines. You got this guy, it looks like a Sunspot story, almost the same story. There's some guy, they say he's spying, he's using a drone. Child porn. Same thing on the sunspot thing when they closed down the observatory. Similar story. So you have all this stuff. You got the New Jersey drones. You got drones overseas. You got people expanding their borders using drones. But this is most likely what they're seeing right here. Here, let me put it on the right one. Skynet, are you ready? Look at this little baby.
Oh, yeah, that was an interesting article.
This is what is flying around. Not this specific drone, but things like it. And there's, I don't know, thousands of corporations investing in drone delivery, drone surveillance, drone LiDAR. Everything's going to be connected with this AI system. All of these companies, all of the traffic light, cameras, your phone, everything, your banking. They're setting up all of this infrastructure, but first they have to scare you into accepting it. And then at the end, they could always pull out
what was the title of that article there on Zero Hedge? I had read that one, but I forgot to...
National
Palmer
Security
Luckey
Mission.
And Sam Altman combined forces for... Okay. Yeah, it's quite the interesting launch anywhere type of... when I say launch anywhere, man, you could launch that thing out of the back of a VW Bug, you know what I mean?
And this was December 5th, right before all the drone starting showed up. So if you look through the headlines, you'll see companies going, hey, look, we got this new AI system. We're testing it. We got the licensing. We got the permission. And if it's military or Homeland Security, they're just going to ignore it. They're not even going to tell you what it is. But yeah, what do you think about this whole idea of them basically privatizing airspace for only government and corporate use? It's like shutting
that means
down.
I should be able to privatize the airspace above my home as well, up to a certain altitude. So if those drones come in at 10 feet above my house, you're way inside my own airspace. There need to be some sort of reciprocation for the average person. So you can't have drones just cruising around the house that 12 feet off your roof, or 6 feet out your window, 8 foot off the ground. At some point, you have to be able to create a net of security around your own residence.
Yeah, well, I have drones, and I'm allowed to fly them above 40 feet and up to 400 feet. But if that area right there, the 300 to 400 feet, is where all of these commercial drones will be flying as well, because they can't fly above that or they're going to hit actual aircraft, or they're just going to build bigger drones and register them with the FFA, and they'll be flying around with all the commercial airliners. And think about shipping. There's a big problem with shipping. There has been. They do it by plane, by train, by truck. Now they can cut a lot of that out by delivering directly via AI aircraft. And people are thinking electric. No, these are gas-powered drones. They have a gas tank. They have a lot of flight time. And we're talking like 15 to 20 hours in the sky. You know how far you could get flying in 15 to 20 hours? Almost really anywhere related to your area. No problem.
Yeah, even with the height, because I know after the Hurricane Helene incident over here, they were doing a lot of deliveries with drones into the mountains up about 6,000 feet or so. They were able to go over several ridges, 5,000, 6,000 foot in elevation, and then get over valleys down. Right. So that's quite some distance, and those were electric. So put that in perspective. They were able to go out of sight over a 6,000 foot peak down into the valley behind that and deliver supplies and medicines on electric drones that could stay up for 40 minutes at a time. And those were commercial operators that were donating their time and expertise to help people. So if that's just commercial operation and geolocation and whatever they were doing out there, imagine what the military has in terms of things that are well above that, even on the electric side, and even more silent with a heavier payload capacity.
Well, my point kind of being is right now they're freaking people out. They're going to make new laws that restrict the airspace for companies, for government. And then you're just going to see things up in the sky all over the place. Just like when Starlink first came on the scene and there were millions of people out there saying they saw UFOs, but it turned out to be satellites. Now they're saying they're UFOs, they're drones. No, it's just the way things are going forward. Think Blade Runner. If you remember that, the older version of that, they had all these levels of society. You lived on the ground. That's with the people with no IDs, no biometric stuff. They're getting out of the food carts. And then you just go up in economics up to the sky. And there's drone delivery, drone taxis, drone everything. And not to mention, there are several car companies that are flying their taxis and testing those right now. A lot of that's what we're seeing. But you could just see in 10 years, all the regulation will be done. The newness of the idea of these robots flying everywhere will be gone, and people will accept it. And that's the whole next era of things. Robots on the microscopic level all the way to everyday tasks that you're doing. So it's all going to be delivered this way.
Maybe and IOTA is going to be taking care of that on the blockchain too, for real-time monitoring of, you know, a quadrillion computations and settlements per day is approximately where they need to get to for the Internet of Things on a smart dust, if it comes up to commercial application as they envision it being, where the assets in the world will be tokenized, like your house or your car or whatever, your TVs, or you're going to be renting your clothes. Everything's going to have a value assigned to it. And that's going to be changing by the minute, by the hour, by the day, which will need to be readjusted. So a nation's value itself, what we call GDP, is going to be restructured into a way of things that are going to be on the blockchain and settled on a distributed ledger are coming in on real time. Real time. So when it comes up to this amount of calculations that you're talking about, the data centers, how much electricity are they going to be needing? Supercomputers, I mean, just to tokenize carbon assets using LiDAR to go over to see, you know, the tree species and the carbon sequestration because maybe a storm knocked down, you know, they're going to be going after the storms in real time following storm fronts, because your calculation of carbon credits of the forest you pledged to keep off, even that one day of mismanagement or misallocation of value on that, in turn can then take down a country's value, because all of these are going to be bundled into a package and sold off as $1 billion investment to somebody else. So if they're able to send drones after the weather fronts are coming through, literally within minutes, they'll know how many trees had fallen, and they could subtract that out of the carbon sequestration for the yearly total. Now, just that itself and that one application is going to require what we can understand supercomputers to run one tiny, fragmented, minuscule application in the entire ecosystem, what we consider the global economy. Carbon sequestration and measuring forest density on the allocation for a year of what they would pay you on the acreage you pledged into that program. A supercomputer is going to run that one program. Now, it's going to come into the Internet of Things to have all that connected. Then we bring in Hashgraph and Quant, XRP, RippleNet, on-demand liquidity, and all this starts to wrap in. But, you know, taking it these different settlement layers and understandings, like you're talking about the drones, now you need to bring it out into way beyond cryptocurrency, into the global financial ecosystem in real-time monitoring. Yes. So if you're sick and your biometrics are being measured in real time of your productivity, they can subtract your wages. They could subtract GDP off a country because you're not as productive that they would have forecast you out to add this much into company revenue, tax base, all in real time. I mean, literally within minutes of computation, they're going to be settling on seconds or minutes or hours maximum. There's no more end of the day accounting, end of the day, end of the month settlements, nothing. This is going to be a thing of the past. We're talking about end of the minute settlements, end of the hour computation for the entire planet's wealth adjusted by the hour. Now imagine how much electricity that's going to take, and why these data centers are there, and why you're paying so much more for electricity, and why they're going to try to go to nuclear. Like everything that we're being replaced as humans with is to give that power literally to machines. So I thought I'd add that in because it's a fun Thursday night.
But I was going to say there's more to that, really, because
Oh, there's way more. Keep going.
If you think about that, if you're going to have companies like Tesla or any, you could pick one that have auto-driving cars, flying taxis, and then you're going to equate, well, we're having problems with pilots, having human issues, and then it's too much for air traffic controllers to keep track of all the things flying. And then what you have is the government saying, you know what? We tested all these smaller gas-powered drones. They're too little. We need to put more cargo on them. And then the airport is full of AI-flown aircraft that are delivering everything. And I'm talking about the big ones, 737s, etc. There's going to be so many things flying around that you will have to have a data collection center, a massive computational warehouse to keep track of all of the objects like they do in low Earth orbit, but down here in the skies. That's what they're trying to set up. And humans won't be involved in any of this. And it kind of begs the question, at which point did we realize that we're not even part of the civilization anymore? When there's just layers that you're not part of that are completely controlled by AI and a system that you can't see the guy behind the curtain, so to speak, right? It's not like the Wizard of Oz. You can't pull the curtain down and go, oh, it's you. It'll be too much, so much more complicated than that. The AI will be running it where no one knows who's running anything, literally. And then you'll have politicians blaming this person, that person. They'll have hearings about things that will last forever, but the control over the civilization doesn't change. They just say, we'll do this or we'll do that. The question is how long of a space between when they remove basically the human element out of delivery systems, transportation systems, and financial systems, where there's no one to really, literally, not a person, not a single soul to call and say, hey, this is a glitch, this is a mess up. There won't be anybody. And if you've ever called any company in the past 10 years for customer service, you'll know that that's well into that program. You cannot talk to anybody. You get on there and you're like, yes, I have a problem with this. I'm sorry, I don't understand. Can I send you to a different place? Then you get there, it's another AI. Like, rarely do you get people on the other side, unless it's like a call center in India where there's still millions of people to pay to do jobs. All that's going to get replaced by algorithms and AI. That's the whole thing people are not seeing. And once they have that system in place, they don't need the majority of the population anymore. A small population can keep up or hold up their little technocratic society at the top. And there'll be so much buffer between the peasant and those that run things, a giant technocratic system that barely anybody even understands, much less really agreed to. But it was in the user agreement back in 2005 when you joined TikTok or something. I don't know. They'll have it. But you signed here. I'm just kidding on that, but that seems to be where it's going, where the skies will be saturated with only corporate and military aircraft. And they will need more tax money to pay for these data centers. And once it's complete, now we don't need the taxpayer anymore. There's plenty of taxpayers in Africa and South America that haven't been ripped, robbed, and now they understand the system. So all of those countries that are like on the verge of figuring out that they've been totally bamboozled, think about Europe. They're about to figure out that they don't have the money to fight a war. If they did, say Russia did invade Europe, anything short of a nuclear war, a kinetic war, Europe doesn't have the money to fight it. They gave it all away to climate change programs, billions of dollars, and migration funds to help, rehouse migrants and all of these other programs that did nothing for the nation that they live in. And then if there was time to fight a war, they don't have the money. They can't afford the ammunition. They can't afford the manpower. It's all been spent on hoaxes. Like for the past, I'm going to say 10 years, it's been building to that point. And at the same time, simultaneously, they've convinced them to stop farming and stop sticking up for themselves. It's just, that's where we're at. On the verge of collapse is the way I see it.
The man behind the curtain is not a man behind the curtain, it is an electron. Because everything that you see moving forward from this point requires electricity. Now, without that constant flow of electrons to power the system ceases. So you see a lot of these futuristic movies where they're running around with axes trying to break, electric cables and try to cut off the system. But then you have to wonder, like, how fast will these, repair robots be flown in to do the repairs on a broken cable, some sort of, drone assisted welder or something will be able to come in with its robotic fingers and and put all the cables and connections back together, whether it be fiber optic or straight up copper. At that point, would it be possible? You'd be praying for a CME you would be praying for a micronova event off of the sun. Now, maybe this is the cycle, though. Maybe it has always come to this point. Maybe it has always reached this apex of control because this entity, this darkness, whatever you like to term it as, is using technology and harvesting all the resources off a planet, trying to reconnect to the creator, but it can't. So it's trying to harvest human beings and use our brains and our connections, transhumanist fusion, to tap back into source itself. But maybe that equalizer mechanism is the micronova from the sun. The thing that will wipe out all electronic communications. That's a 17, 20-hour event that, we're going to lose part of our oceans. All of our forests are going to burn. And we're going to get another black mat layer across the planet. But maybe that is the only thing that wipes that, what we're talking about, future. I don't even know the word for it. You could probably try to put a moniker on it. But maybe it wipes that back and takes the slate clean. And it takes us 10,000 years to come back to the same point where we are right now. But something has gone underground and lying dormant or in wait for us just to get enough technology, just to get enough humans back on the planet. Because if you look at some of these disasters through history, we normally get knocked back to about 10 million humans or maybe even 10 million breeding pairs. That's it. That takes a long time to bring the population back up to there be enough manpower for a society to get hypnotized by all of the goods, bells, and whistles and wealth promises and transfers to move us from the Industrial Revolution again all the way through the same process. It took about 350 to 400 years. Maybe after this micronova or extreme CME of like an X400 takes us back to and wipes this technology out, and maybe that's the reprieve that allows humanity to come back. All the satellites are gone. No more Starlink, no nothing. Like the Black Knight satellite, that was one of the survivors from the last era. Hopefully it gets wiped completely clean, the slate, but also humanity gets wiped back to those who are underground survive. Maybe you were on a tour for Ruby Falls in the caves for the day and the micronova hit and you just happened to be on a cave tour. And your DNA survived because you were at the right place at the right time on a holiday. But whatever it is, when it comes to this point that you spoke of, Ransom, and myself too, with these monitoring of just in time of the entire world's assets on the Internet of Things. When it comes to that, plus what you're envisioning in terms of data center power draw, like how much extra additional power is going to have to go into the world moving forward from this point to have humanity powered enough for light in our homes and to power all these data centers and to power everything else that would be involved with running cryptocurrencies. Data centers are one thing. That's just for, the drones and the AI to run all of what you're talking about. And then it's going to require a different level of power to push through and have all this computational power for hashgraph, quant, everything else on the cryptocurrency sides too. That's going to require an exponential amount on its own above what's going to be required for AI. And then where does that leave us? What's left for us, the human? But it's going to get to this level where literally humanity will be no longer needed. Well, will the machines take out humanity, or will they leave a repair slave race class in place, a breeding class just to make sure there's more humans that it can use? And at what point do we start trying to use resonant frequency and resonance to try to have the sun throw a micronova at us to take us away from this dystopian futuristic nightmare? At some point, those little pods that they have in Canada for suicide, the suicide pods, nobody's going to want that. They're going to be begging the sun to take down this whole electric grid. So your man behind the curtain there's no man behind the curtain. It's an electron. Pure energy. So put that in perspective. They took the first snapshots of photons of light, which is pure consciousness. You're looking into God. They actually photographed photons, pure light in real time. And it wasn't it was a stars, a crown of light between a yin yang symbol. That's what they photographed in real time for the first time it's ever been photographed of pure light. So then we start to see it as an electron, an energetic particle also that can be used to enslave humanity. Photon light being photographed for the first time. Like we're starting to see these dualities of two different ends of the spectrum, the yin yang itself being presented to us. Now, will electrogravitics and all this new technology to allow humanity freedom be unveiled at the same time with the supposed UFO disclosure and all these, new energy devices that could be powered from that 0-point technology? I don't know. But anyway, it's going to require an enormous amount more power on this planet to power and give literally life to these devices. It breathes, it is alive. It requires electrons to stay alive. We require nutrients, carbohydrates, proteins, sugars. That entity which you refer to requires electrons to stay alive. So food source is a food source. We just gave that entity a place to house itself for 100 years inside insulated cables. Now it's outside the cables. It is broken free out of its matrix, but it still requires food. And if we can starve the food source, then we have a chance. If not, your only chance is going to be the sun sending out a pulse. I guess. I don't know, Ransom. It's really kind of a strange world to think about because we knew the old world, so we're moving into the new world. A lot of us who knew the old world are not going to be happy with this new world we're going into, but those born today, for example, will just be born into it. They won't know any different. So maybe the lucky ones are the ones born today, where they had no measurement of the past and the future to compare, where they just know now and that's it. The lucky ones maybe will be born today.
I think the AI might have got you on that picture of a proton. I think that turned out to be a computer-generated image of a proton, not unlike the pictures of black holes that we've seen and other things like that. It's a rendering. Actually, I was looking for that because I saw that, and then
It's the blue, green, and yellow one.
Yeah. So supposedly that's a computer generated from AI. So AI comes to the rescue again.
No, that was fake news then. They said that was actually photographed in real time in a laboratory for the first time ever in human history.
We will.
You liars on the news. Whoever would have thought the news would have lied to us?
We'll return to that at a later date, but I'm pretty sure it was an AI thing. But you know what is real?
Hey, you faker.
Is, I don't usually say this, but from everything I've read, you might want to buy some silver, like literally before there is none, for one, and then before everybody owns it and it goes up in price. So we have this tariff idea that's supposed to trigger a global trade war with gold and silver set to benefit, right? But at the same time, they're saying, will silver prices soar in 2025 due to AI? See, AI's the answer again. It will help make us money. No, but I really do think that the era we're going into and the nature of silver, those two ideas means that it will become more expensive. We've talked many times about how much silver they're kind of obliterating and wasting in technology when they bomb people. You know how much it would take to get that silver back out? They would literally have to do some of this strip mining where they go through all of it, and then find it and process it. So they're probably not going to do that anytime in the near future.
I have a number for you. Ransom, I have a number. It's $250 an ounce at current value to recycle solar panels that are broken, for example, from the storm Dara in the UK. It ruined 190 acres of the UK's largest solar farm. Now, with that being said, all the broken material around there, at least they were saying $250 an ounce is a break even to recycle that at today's technology and cost. $250 an ounce. That's where we need to go before it gets viable enough for people to start getting into it to recycle that.
Well, it's kind of on the rare earth element, idea. Everybody's about to start getting stingy with these things that we can make technology with, things that are necessary to move to the next level. And silver is one of those. And with the nature of it, also, I don't think that the powers that be want you to really have much of it. Not only for a monetary backup, but for things like medication and things like barter and all of these other things that they just can't control. Gold and silver are those kind of things that you can always melt down and make it look like something else. They've been doing it for thousands of years. And people forget, like the Vatican itself as an entity probably has equivalent amount of gold as the monarchy, or I guess it's a patriarchy now, as the royal family does. And that's a state secret. But we know at least that they have $900 billion worth of gold. We have no idea really how much China has. We don't have a real good idea of how much America has. And even if they put statistics out, those would probably be false because those are state secrets, national security. But for the average common guy, it's about to become hard to get. And so you're going to see like a massive more amount, which has already been happening over the past 10 years. It's people melting down all these artifacts, jewelry, heirlooms, everything. They're melting it back to get back in the system. It's about to become pretty rare for the common man to own not only precious metals, but rare earth elements. So much so that there are gangs of armies that will saw off your exhaust just to go recycle some of that potential right there. So and that's been happening for a long time. Your catalytic converters have a lot of stuff in there. They seem to be unnecessary, except for the environmental rules that put them there. But SA down the street got about 300 of them in his yard. Who knows where they came from? They're all cut off with a sawzall. That guy's sitting on some money right now. He's probably waiting till the markets are right. It's so funny how even the recyclers are doing things like sitting on their stuff or selling it all based on the markets. And they don't even check the markets. They just know, oh, this is up, sell it. This is down, keep it. Until they have a stockpile. And then there's like the entire desert where I grew up was covered in debris from all the way back like to the wagon days of little iron parts. And then the railroad era came through. And there was all this metal just everywhere out in the desert when I was a kid. You cannot find a speck of that now. All of it's been picked up. Very environmentally friendly for the addicted people to clean the deserts for us. They don't pick up the Walmart bags, but they pick up every scrap of usable, recyclable material. And it looks like this is a world thing right now. So, I don't usually say invest in stuff, but I'm thinking silver, gold, platinum, if you can get your hands on it and store it for another 10 years, you might be looking at a nice turnover. I mean, think about all the people like me, myself. I probably had, 5,000 in Bitcoin when it was 13,000 or so. I had to sell it I needed the money now. Look what I would have probably had today with just 5,000. It'd have been off the hook. And they're talking about to 200,000 next year. There is no way that the central banks are going to make people stop using Bitcoin. And so they'll be forced to deal in it. I think all of those countries that said, hey, okay, we won't do it, they're still going to do it. They're just not going to officially do it.
Yeah, I have a number for you. Some people do follow Chinese reserves and gold imports. And, a lot of times China doesn't bring the refined metal in. They'll just bring the concentrate in and refine it themselves. So there's people who try to follow these different, ways that China is bringing gold in, and then they can do a sort of an assessment. So far, the last one that I found was 87,000 tons is what China has so far. Others doing the accounting for them. That's nearly 10 times what the U.S. has, if that's even true. But that's just trying to follow the trail, for a better term, from the mines that they've bought, the concentrate that gets imported, because there's records for exports from nations about concentrates versus just straight up metal bars and the what's got delivered off of COMEX and the 400-ounce bars or whatever. So just put that in perspective. That is way, 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 way lower than China admits to, but other private, economic investigators put it at 87,000 tons approximately. But that whole cryptocurrency thing, yes, the best, and somebody was asking us earlier, what's the best thing you can do for sort of a general thing? Well, if you're going to look at something like this, so just as an easy example, if you're going to buy the metals, this gold or silver, if you do, keep it somewhere. Don't put it in a bank vault. Don't put it in, not a vault, but excuse me, like a safe deposit box. Don't tell everybody where it is. Keep it in your house somewhere. Keep it somewhere safe, because if you can't get to it and you can't put it in your hand, you don't really own it. That's even if I own any gold or silver, that's an old clunky thing that never has any value, never kept any value over the last 4,000 years, and really wasn't that valuable. So why would you even want to get something like that? And like, who would even have such a barbaric relic, as they call it across the mainstream media? I don't know. But if you don't hold it, you don't own it. And I would say the same thing with your private keys. If you don't hold your keys and you're leaving your whatever BTC on an exchange, you don't own it. Because all of these scam coins that came out, like FTX, for example, or what was another? Gemini, and these sort of things, and BitConnect and Luna. There's been a whole range of them. They come out with their own cryptocurrencies, and the thing was, you had to deposit your crypto to get their coins, and they were paying you interest off the new people coming in. But eventually, as any good Ponzi scheme does, it collapses because there's not enough new people coming in. So the moral to the story is, you got to have your private keys or you don't own it. Literally, if you don't have it, you don't own it. Somebody else can take it. If it's on an exchange, they own it. They will take it, and the government could write a note and go, hey, we got to confiscate all whatever crypto out of everywhere in this country, and whoosh, it's gone. If you're domiciled exchange and you're holding it on an exchange is in that country, then you lost everything, literally lost everything. You have no claim to it whatsoever. So learn the technology on what, maybe a cold wallet is, or, some of these hardware wallets, there's even some online ones too. I'm not going to mention them because I'm not really a fan of any of those, because they're kind of pass-throughs or whatever, but still better than having it on an exchange, because there are private keys. And if you could extract those private keys off, you could move them to another wallet and just kind of transfer the funds. But you got to have the private keys. Again, it's the same thing. If you got an ounce of gold or whatever, 1/10 of an ounce of gold in your hand, you got it in your hand like you own it. And if somebody said, we're going to come confiscate it, okay, well, okay, it's back in the leaves. I don't know, man. I don't have it. It's back in the leaves somewhere. Same thing. Those are kind of little bits of advice I could give. And giving us a time check here, 52 minutes after the hour. I do appreciate everybody listening tonight. And please remember, support us on Buy Me a Coffee /Civilization Cycle, and also civilizationcycle.com. Put your email in there. We'll get you the show notes for tonight's episode. just 8 or 9 bullet points of the things Ransom and I covered. Maybe it'll help you ring a bell on something you wanted to dive into further. Maybe you could start a conversation with somebody else. Hey, maybe you want to do more research, and this is just kind of the bullet points to point you in the right direction to allow you to have some keywords to then continue searching. But Ransom, I don't know, where does the world go from here? 2025 is going to be an amazing year for all of us. And your Bitcoin at that point, 5,000, if it was going to go to 100,000 and you had 5, it'd probably be worth about $45,000 by now. Or 37,000, somewhere around there.
See, I would have made it, but I had bills. Anyway, I was going to skip to this because you were kind of started the show with, what do you really need after the reset? And, that really depends on what kind of reset we're going to have. But this one covers nuclear war right here. Where do you go? Some states are safer than others in a nuclear attack, and this startling map reveals the prime targets. It's the ones we all know. The problem with this map from Scientific America is they think that they're not going to hit the population centers, that they're just going to bomb where we used to have a bunch of nukes. So these aren't even, this is like if you lived in 1960 map right here, in my opinion. But if you just look, if they did bomb just those areas, you can see that most of the United States and Canada will be a hot zone as far as fallout, random radioactive material coming your way. And this is, like I said, this
the breadbasket of America.
It is, but they're forgetting that they would probably be bombing like Phoenix, New York, Miami, Los Angeles, all of these places. So you could just increase this
Oak
purple.
Ridge, Tennessee.
Right. This purple would just increase. So if this were to happen, you would see a scene just like on The Day After Tomorrow, where all the Americans are running down into Mexico because there was no nuclear targets in Mexico. And you think about this mass migration idea that they've totally done. And this is in the entire northern hemisphere is what we're talking. Not this map that we're looking at, but just picture a similar setup all through Europe, Russia, the Middle East. It's all done. Where do you go? You have to go to Central America, South America, Africa, Australia, New Zealand, places like that. All of these places, like, just think if China, Russia, and the United States, including, I don't know, let's throw Great Britain in there, all decided to launch some nukes. There's nowhere in the northern hemisphere that's going to be growing edible food for a long time. Like, I don't know, 100 years, decades at least. And that's if they're low yield nukes. And then you have a little bit of fallout. So where's everybody going to go? Isn't it odd to you that all the investment in the new era is all below this map? Like all of it. If you move the globe over to Europe, you'd see that the investment's below. What do you think about? It seems like they have a plan. I hope they're not going to do it. But this would be equivalent to the end of the Hunger Dryas. It would literally be like a repeat of the Hunger Dryas ending, and the whole Carolina Bays thing. That would have been the same thing back then. Just all these chunks of ice, debris coming down at supersonic speeds, creating giant explosions. And that's probably why there was no Clovis man and megafauna left. And in this scenario, they will be left. They'll just be toxic like the animals near Chernobyl, which is a long-running experiment. And by the way, all it takes is one nuke in that area, and that little concrete cocoon that they built is done. So the entire area of Eastern Europe will be done. The water table, the rivers, all of it. Do you think that these guys are crazy enough? Or, who are we really talking about? Is it an AI? I mean, are we talking extraterrestrials? What is it?
Yeah, it won't need food. And if it could last 300 years until the Earth repairs itself, or 500 years.
Take your seeds with you when you migrate.
Yeah, another one. Take the seeds. Thanks for joining us tonight, David DuByne, Ransom Godwin, right here. Every Thursday night, 10 p.m. to midnight, Civilization Cycle. Check out civilizationcycle.com for our show notes, and also buy me a coffee /Civilization Cycle. It's more like buy us a double espresso so we can keep chatting like chipmunks here.